everybody, this is Mrs. Behrens. I'm here with your Ecosystems Science lesson for Tuesday, October 20th. Your learning targets today are I can observe and describe organisms, I can compare and contrast organisms, and I can describe my noticings using writing and drawing. The materials you will need are your science notebook, a pencil, and crayons or colored pencils. I'm having some issues with my document camera, so our video will look a little bit different today. I'm going to move this out of the way, and we're going to start by reading an article about isopods. This is the organism that we will be observing and comparing and contrasting in our lesson today. Here's a sneak peek of the isopods that we will be looking at and using. These isopods are the organism that we are going to add to the terrarium in our ecosystem. Isopods, more like a lobster. Scientists call them isopods, which means equal legs, but you probably know them by some other names, like woodlouse, pillbug, sowbug, or roly-poly. Isopods are not insects. In fact, they are close relatives of lobsters, crabs, and shrimp. Like those sea creatures, most isopods live in water. There are a few land-living or terrestrial kinds of isopods, though. Yours belong to this group. Look at the isopod with a hand lens. We will actually just be looking at them on the camera here. You will see a flat oval body covered by smooth, hard plates. It seems to be covered in a suit of armor. That stiff suit of armor is actually a skeleton. But unlike our skeleton, it's worn on the outside and is called an exoskeleton. At the head end is a pair of antennae and two tiny eyes. Now, count the pairs of legs. If your isopod has 6 pairs of legs, it is very young and has not experienced its first molt. What is a molt? The isopod's exoskeleton is good protection, but it cannot grow. So in order to grow, the isopod must shed its old exoskeleton, or molt. After the molt, it will have 7 pairs of legs. Half a molt is better than none. It's odd. The isopod sheds only half of its exoskeleton at a time. Usually the front half goes first. Check your isopod's color. Is the color all dark gray or black? Then the isopod has been wearing this exoskeleton for some time. Is the color light gray, or maybe even half light and half dark? Then the isopod has just experienced a molt, or it is in mid-molt. The isopod breathes through specialized organs similar to fish gills. So, like its water-living or aquatic relatives, the isopod needs moisture at all times. Keep this in mind whenever you schedule a rain shower for your terrarium. Wet the isopod's corner too. The isopod has many predators, mostly birds, lizards, and spiders. That's why some isopods, the pillbugs, curl up into a ball to protect themselves. But isopods are more than just food for other animals. Isopods are scavengers. They eat dead and decaying plant matter. What animal in your aquarium also does this job? We will find that out in the next week or two when we set up our aquarium. Be on the lookout for baby isopods. If you're lucky enough to have a pregnant female, she may be bulging with up to 200 eggs in her brood pouch. How many legs will each baby have? How do you imagine they will look? So this gives us some base information about isopods, which we will be adding to our terrariums. At this time, I would like you to take out your science notebook, turn to the next blank page, and follow along as we set up our entry for today. Put the date in the corner, 10/20/2020, and we will title this entry Isopod observation. Today our entry is going to be a table, which we will fill out as we observe and compare and contrast two different isopods. Start by drawing a line down the center of your page. On the left-hand side, write isopod number 1. You can also give him a name if you want. On the right-hand side, write isopod number 2. And you can name them as well. It just makes it a little more fun. We are going to be observing and comparing and contrasting a few different things about these isopods. Follow along as I list these categories down the left-hand side. First, we're going to look at size. Then we will look at the color. And remember, this tells us if they have molted and where they are in that process. Next, we're going to look at motion and position of the isopod. Next, we will look at the pairs of legs. And finally, we will do a drawing. Pause the video now and catch up to where we are in our science notebook. Finally, I am going to draw a line to separate each of these categories, like this. And once your science notebook looks just like mine, you are ready to do your observation. To complete the observation, I am just going to hold up each isopod, number 1 and number 2, to the camera so that you can see them and make an observation. Let's start with isopod number 1. And he doesn't want to be picked up. Here we go. Isopod number 1. What do you notice about the color? What do you notice about his size? What do you notice about his position or his motion? What kind of movement is he doing? I notice that this isopod is mid-molt because his front half is lighter gray and the back half is black. All right, take a few more seconds to observe this guy, who I have named Fred, also known as isopod number 1. Attached in this assignment, you will also find a photograph of Fred, or isopod number 1, and that will allow you to see how many pairs of legs he has. Okay, and now I will get isopod number 2. And here we have isopod number 2. What do you notice about the color of this isopod? How about the size compared to the last one? Is he positioned or moving any differently than the other one? I notice that he is smaller, that his coloring is much different than isopod number 1. And he seems a little bit slower than isopod number 1 as well. Oh, and here's number 1. He's still on my hand right there. Can you see them both in the picture here? All right. Just like I did for isopod number 1, there is a photograph of isopod number 2 on the underside so that you can count the pairs of legs attached to this assignment. Now that I've completed my observation, it's time to record what I noticed. I am going to go through and record some of my observations for isopod number 1. You can follow along and add these to your notebook. Then I will have you complete isopod number 2 on your own. I noticed that isopod number 1, compared to the other one, was larger. He was also wider than isopod number 2. The color of isopod number 1 was gray on the front half and black on the back half. This means that he is mid-molt, or in the middle of shedding his exoskeleton. Isopod number 1 was fast and crawling the whole time. Next, you will look at the photograph attached to this assignment and count how many pairs of legs. Finally, I'm going to complete a drawing of isopod number 1. For this video, I'm just going to start my drawing. I know that he was kind of an oval shape. I'm going to draw him from the side so that I can see his legs. He had antennae that came off the front, and he was black on the back half, and gray on the front half. Now it is your job to complete your observations for isopod number 2. Go through your table and fill out each box on this half of your entry. When you have completed your science notebook entry for today, take a photo of your completed work, submit it to this Schoology assignment, and that is all you need for today.